and Nick.
Councillor Grayson, apologies.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just. I'm going to read that to.
Do you want to bring more paper copy?
No,
you're right.
No.
Okay.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is the Finance and Assets Working Group meeting on Monday, the 7th of July, 5 p.m. Town Clerk, have we got any apologies for absences received?
Yes, so apologies from Councillor Nick Gray, who said he has a personal commitment. And I must explain that Julian Daniels is not at work today, so he's not attending the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you for that. And second is declaration of interest, to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of the business to be transacted on the agenda. Has anybody got anything on that?
No.
Councillor Wiles?
No.
No, thank you. 3 no's. To receive, item number 3 is to receive the minutes of the agenda, the minutes of the working group held on the 9th of June, and to consider any matters arising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in this agenda. Decision is required. And first up, thanks to Councillor Wiles for taking the minutes.
Yes, I've just realised I have to do them again now.
Hence the call for
I didn't bring a pen.
Right, well, thank you anyway. We could always find a way around. So does anybody have any comments on those minutes? Are we happy to approve those minutes?
Happy to approve it. I mean, maybe helpfully or a question, there's one line that's highlighted in red, at least on my version. Is it any my version?
No, that's it. It was questioned under whether the STBF governing document, the STBF, was empowered to own property.
Yeah, so it's twofold. One is, why is it highlighted in red? And more importantly, it's a question that we probably do need an answer to.
Yeah.
Rather than leaving it hanging there by signing off the minutes. So, yeah.
I'm not sure that was my wording, was it?
I didn't add that.
I think I added those words.
You added it.
And I added it in red so that you could see the changes that I've made to the document, as opposed to anything else. But I think the intent is really that as we have our discussion this evening, we will cover all of the items and discussion points on the agenda.
We were talking about the STBF governing document earlier, because I have raised this in the past about whether such a document actually exists.
Yeah.
And I've been referred to the Act of 17 and 15. But I'm not sure that is a valid legal governing document in terms of the Charities Act and so on.
Right.
So I know the town clerk is looking at this, but when you go on the Charity Commission website, there's usually a governing document associated with that charity, which talks about the purposes
of the charity and who the trustees are.
Who the trustee is, how they're elected, how they're reappointed, etc., how meetings are conducted. I've never seen such a document for the Tollbridge Fund. And maybe if it doesn't exist, we need to bring one into being at some point.
Well, that's exactly the purpose of this working group, as far as I'm concerned, and all of the different kind of work streams that we've kind of identified. So for the time being, are we happy with the minutes?
Sorry, the final item there. It was agreed the resolution would go to council on the 23rd of June, because we talked about this building. We can only proceed with any discussions if we have a formal resolution. But I don't think that resolution went to
no.
council.
No.
It does need to go to the next.
Yes, extraordinary.
Yeah. No, understand that, but the minutes are accurate and those matters arising, like I think everything in the minutes, I think I'd like to kind of to work through the minutes after the public participation slot,
Okay.
just to make sure that we pick everything up, if that's agreeable.
Okay.
Yeah,
Second, councillor.
yeah, and
You
happy
agreed.
to approve.
Okay.
Okay, so the third item, or the fifth item then is the
Sorry,
public parties.
Fourth item, sorry.
Fourth item was the minutes, was it?
No, sorry,
No,
fourth
sorry.
item is public participation.
Fourth item
Yeah.
is public, I was looking at the previous minutes.
Ah.
So do we have any requests to speak at this meeting?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to item 6 on the agenda, review and actions for the working group. Members to consider and review the minutes of the last meeting, actions and matters arising with verbal updates from councillors. So shall we just work through the minutes? The first thing was the key task of the working group is to explore the relationship between the toll bridge and the town council. That's kind of the terms of remit, and as enticing it is to get dragged into other things, we want to stay as close as possible to that remit. The chair outlined his thoughts about the way forward for the working group, which I did, and what I'm thinking is that we've got these work streams. If each work stream can generate a kind of a report, those reports can go as attachments to a covering document which summarises the reports and any recommendations going forward. Does that make sense to people?
Mhm.
So, for instance, we've had this report that we're going to consider later on from the interim finance officer. So that would fit into the financial work stream, and there would be a summary of that together with other things that need to come out as part of. So is everybody happy if that's the way we move forward? Because if we work and we're generating reports as we go along, if we have in mind that those reports will ultimately be incorporated into the final report of this working group. Everybody happy with that?
Mhm.
Broad brushes.
Yeah, good. We like broad brushes. Okay, so we identified some 5 work streams. The first was the legal one, and we were hoping that the property manager and Nick Gray, Councillor Gray, would be able to look into this work stream and examine the title of the various buildings, where the status of the leases are, the obligations and the income and so forth. So they're not here, but the action still rests with them to lead on that work stream.
I've got some verbal updates if you want me to share.
Okay, yeah, please.
So the property manager said he'd like to provide a brief update. The Empire Cinema. So this was around the insurance company have been informed of the fire risk assessment and the work is taking place. There's no increase in premium and no adjustments are required. He has received a certificate that shows emergency lighting has been checked and there are no issues to report. Due diligence has been completed on the fire alarm system contractor, and he has received copies of documentation such as public liability insurance and RAMS, which is sorry, I can share this. I'll share this with you. Yeah, I'll share this with you. The work will take 3 to 4 days to complete, and the property manager is working with the contractor to agree a start date. So the contractor is booked in for the next several weeks, but the property manager does have a meeting soon with the leaseholder of the cinema to discuss the various points, including the extractor system. Then they will be able to explore how a possible JV could work, although the focus remains directed towards compliance and safety at the moment. On the subject of compliance, the EPC has been completed. The visit lasted 3 hours, and thankfully, the usage of the building as the type of use reflects the outcome when the data is added on the software program, which involved the high ceilings that are found in cinemas. The EPC was granted and it did pass. And it has achieved a D in the EPC. And the property manager will produce a full report on the findings and what work will be required in the future, but it's complied with regulations.
Okay,
So Fishergate, there is a little update on that. Do you want that now or do you want that later in the meeting?
no,
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
kind of doing this kind of legal work stream, whether it's
Okay,
it links into the physical property issues.
okay. So there is a trust who have confirmed that the council is eligible for a grant for the fabric of the building only. This is not one of the usual approaches, and so the property manager now needs to gather everything together to submit the application, and I will be asked to assist the property manager with that task. He's making changes to the museum sketch design that was produced, along with other options he provided earlier this year. The changes, which are focused on the second floor, which includes the WC and the kitchen, will make it more cost effective to deliver. And the architects have been instructed to complete the as-is section drawings, and they will adjust the sketch design. He had a meeting with Sandwich Heritage Harbour Trust. That's this coming week, and he will update everyone following that meeting. The Empire Cinema, we have found the missing land certificate, but his understanding is that after October 2003, any land certificate or charge certificate ceased to be evidence of title. If this is the case, then the electronic register held by HM Land Registry became the authoritative source of ownership and rights. So we do need to instruct a solicitor to deal with the transfer, and he believes that there should be evidence in the files that Dover District Council registered by mistake. At the same time, he'd like the covenant on the restriction of selling alcohol dealt with in that process. And the town clerk has received a quote from Mole and Mole in the region of £2,000 to undertake that work. Another legal update for Fishergate. Fishergate is not registered. The documentation was sent to Kent County Archives without any copies. He knows that they are holding numerous documents as he has approached them. What he's struggling to understand at the moment is how a lease was issued without someone at Land Registry not realising there was no registration number for the freehold. So having a copy of a transfer document and indenture is unlikely to satisfy a grant provider. So we do need to have the property registered for the first time. And again, he would recommend Mole and Mole, but we do still need to keep looking for this missing documents, which I know Millie's assisting with as well.
That'd be a similar cost as well, I assume.
I think, in that arena.
But that's Empire, the Tollbridge funded.
So the Empire Cinema, and he was talking about Fishergate as well.
Fishergate.
Fishergate is the town council, isn't
We hope.
So for the sake of clarification, he just wanted to add that the land certificate is in the name of Mayor, Alderman and Burgesses. Changes to how property is registered since 2003 seem to reflect that this certificate does not trump what is on Land Registry. Land Registry is shown as Dover District Council. So we definitely will need Mole and Mole, the solicitors, to progress this for us. There's another one. Oh, the other one relates to the use of Guildhall. So I think you're coming on to that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, that's really helpful that he's done those things. Just a little bit concerned, £2,000 here and £2,000 there and stuff like that. You know, it's got to, if we're going to go ahead with this, we're going to have to take a shorter paper to the town council, to the full council, and get approval. I don't think this working group has the authority to go instructing solicitors, but it's really helpful that the property manager has brought some clarity actually onto kind of the title deed. So thank him for doing that. Mm-hmm. Any other comments on?
We have no choice, but we have to tidy up the legal side of this.
Yeah. Okay. Anything more on the legal work stream then? Or shall we move on to the financial work stream?
I think on all of this work, Julian's doing good work. We need to have regular reports to both FGP and to Torbridge Fund respectively.
Yeah.
At each meeting preferably, just to give updates so that we can know what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Summary updates that, you know, they don't necessarily need to go into huge amounts
Not
of detail,
huge
but
just
just sufficient
any
detail
changes
to.
since the last meeting.
Okay.
Take that to action.
All right. Financial. The transfers between Sandwich Town Council, the Guildhall, etc. Councillor Carter to take this forward. I did have a discussion with the interim finance officer, and I did ask him, and I'm very pleased with the report that he sent out. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read the report, which was sent out on Thursday. Don't think you've seen it, have you, Councillor Wiles? Okay, well, I'm sorry, but
Was it sent to all members of this?
no, it was just sent to myself and the mayor. So I'll forward that to Councillor Wiles and also to Nicholas Gray. But it makes interesting reading. The interim finance officer has looked at the number of inter-entity movements, the number of physical inter-account transfers, and the number of inter-budget movements. And he's saying the transactions between the two corporate bodies, Sandwich Town Council and Sandwich Tollbridge Fund, during an 11-month period, it looks like 83 transactions. For the number of physical inter-account transfers, this totaled 190 over the course of 11 months. So we're kind of actually getting some feel for the amount of work, because when we all think of how much time it takes to receive an invoice, to get it checked, to get it approved, to process it, you know, you're talking at least half an hour, if not more. And then when you add on all of the other time that we as councillors and the town clerk and everybody involved, it really, in my mind, starts to give some quantum as to the amount of work and as to why the job is so busy. And then they're saying the number of inter-budgetary movements is like 20 a month. So there's another 200. And again, you know, all of the thought and effort that's gone in behind them. So he's saying in conclusion, it's very difficult to recommend any specific action at this time. Reducing transfers is only really a very small part of the issue of workload, as it's in a complicated way in which Sandwich Town Council and the various entities are set up, you know. So, and this dedicates the specific software. So we've got something there to think about and to work with and to give some thought to as we move forward. Any thoughts, comments?
That's about 2 per working day.
I think it's more than that. There's 250 and about over 200. Yeah, you're probably right. 2 per working day. So that's potentially 2 hours
An
per
hour
day.
per year.
Yeah, at least an hour, if not 2 per day. Okay. So that's a very helpful start to get that done. So again, he set out all of the kind of the interbank account because he's been able to take a download from the bank account. So we'll see that. So I think that's very helpful. Further analysis is needed, but it's a great start on the financial. Okay, so let me just get back into. So the next work stream that we talked about was the organisational, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see some thoughts that I sent out a short while ago. Colin, have you seen these? Let me just.
Like I say, I did get some copies done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this isn't an answer, but it's me setting out some of the kind of the key questions that I see. And if we're looking at the organisation, to understand the organisational aspects, I propose to ask the basic questions of what, who, why, and how. So what does the relationship between Sandwich Town Council and Sandwich Toll Bridge Fund actually provide? Who are the customers? Are the customers satisfied? What's the overall performance? That's basically kind of what's the purpose. Customers could be those community organisations who've received grants in the past. Why are things done in the current manner? Is it an efficient way of working? Is there clear accountability? Is the model sustainable? Are intelligent, informed decisions made? Are the communication lines across the stakeholders clear? So these are the questions I'd like to try and address. Who is delivering the service? Are their roles and responsibilities clear? Who actually are the stakeholders? How does the existing model operate? What are the management arrangements in terms of governance meetings and reports? What are the information flows? How does the money flow? And then the report to address the 4 key points by setting up what's in place at the moment, what are the benefits and concerns, what are the options going forward, and any recommendations. So I'm proposing to work on a draft report with help from the town clerk and from other people that I'll be calling upon to have the first draft of that report available for the end of August. Does that make sense? Any thoughts, comments, reactions? I'll take that as compliance. You're reflecting.
Thinking.
Well, I'm open to comments, constructive. I'm open to criticism. It's just my kind of first thought.
So my first thoughts would be, it's valid to ask the questions, but what we do need is what is the outcome we want from all of that, because there's a lot of considerations there, but we need to also say this is in order to, so that I'm just leaving that there in the sense of we can do a lot of work, but we need to have a deliverable that improves, supports, changes, whatever it is that we currently do. And that's just a sort of a gut reaction to a lot of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why the 4 points at the bottom, the report to address each of the above points by setting out what's in place at the moment, what's good about it and what's bad about it, how could we improve it, what are our options going forward, and what would we recommend.
What do you mean by customers? Customers of the town council and
the town council? Yeah. Why is this relationship in place? Who's actually benefiting from it? What does these entities do for one another and so forth?
Well, it all goes back to this lasted lease, doesn't it, from whenever it was, 74 or something. Which I don't know why that lease was drawn up in the way it was, to say it's jointly and severally to STC and the Tollbridge Fund. I don't understand the logic of that, because at that time the Tollbridge Fund should have been a separate, entirely separate charity to STC.
Yeah.
But even back then, it seems the two were so intertwined that they were, two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
That's what we need to untangle. And,
Yeah, and I understand. I understand that, and I think that this, just stepping back from it a little bit, as you would in any organisation, and saying, well, what are you actually doing? Who are you doing it for? That's what I'm trying to address there as part of the kind of the organisation.
the problem is that ever since that time, the Tollbridge Fund has never asserted its independence. It's always been a council, the council by any other member, hand in glove, and it's not. And the councillors sitting in that room as trustee haven't separated themselves from the council.
I agree. Okay. Yeah.
So just another reflection that on the roll now.
Yeah.
Whatever we do in terms, the risk is that we just criticise the relationship because we feel it's not right. So whatever we discuss, ideally should be data based. So some of these are subjective questions. If we can support them by data, that will help us rather than us all jumping to the conclusion about our roles and responsibilities. Clear, and everybody says no, and not all of it. Murky, for the sake of it, we don't really know. So driving out data will help evidence-based assessments of these types of questions.
Absolutely, and for me, what's the terms of reference of the various committees? What's the terms of reference of the Tollbridge? What's the job descriptions for the individuals that are working here? Where are they assigned? So it's not. I don't want this to be kind of a talking shop. I want it to be evidence-based, and part of the evidence may be interviews with people, whether it's the town clerk, and getting kind of intelligent and definitive and guiding statements as to how things are and as to how things could be improved.
I mean, it's a bit like, for me, you talk about evidence-based. For me, the starting point of the evidence is the governing document.
But that falls under the legal
It's
stream.
a bit like the British Constitution. It's kind of unwritten, and it's all done on, we've always done it that way, all tradition, unwritten rules.
Yeah.
I'm very uneasy with that whole approach. I'd like to see things in black and white. So the starting point should be our governing document, and then we work downwards from that.
I agree, and for it to sit properly in my mind, there should be a service level agreement between the town hall, the Sandwich Town Council, and the Tollbridge Fund. You will provide this. It's not documented anywhere.
Even more than that, the Tollbridge Fund annually should meet and decide who deals with its administration.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the town council.
Correct.
They could appoint their own clerk, their own portfolio manager, etc.
Well, that's item 3. Who is delivering the service? Okay. I welcome any thoughts, comments, and criticism over the next few weeks. While this is just really kind of my first thoughts about the organisation, and I think it's an important work stream that needs to be addressed as part of this review. Okay, the next work stream was the physical property issues, and Town Clerk, you just mentioned you may have a verbal update from the property manager.
Oh, yes, thank you. Property manager said the initial step in allocating running costs is to calculate a base line cost per square metre for the entire building. This is achieved by dividing the total running costs by the total floor area. Using this rate, it is possible to assign a basic cost to any individual room by multiplying its floor area by the building pound per square metre rate. However, this method alone is not insufficient, is not sufficient, as it does not account for variations in occupancy levels. For instance, 2 rooms of identical size should not incur the same cost allocation if one is used for less time than the other. To achieve a more accurate representation, adjustments must be made for time-based usage. He has created a formula for usage in brackets occupation. Beyond occupancy duration, it is also essential to consider the intensity of use. A room occupied by 3 members of staff using laptops, heaters or other equipment will naturally consume more resources than a room with the same time usage but lower energy or equipment demands. He has created a formula for intensity. Therefore, both duration and intensity of use must be factored into the cost allocation to ensure fairness and accuracy. He needs to check a few measurements, but he does now have the formulas and can accurately determine the cost for a particular area. Importantly, it can be adjusted with ease to reflect any increased occupancy or a change in demands.
That's great that we actually can understand what kind of the cost of the building is, because in many respects, the Sandwich Toll Bridge Fund, does it need to meet in the council chamber, or could it say we'll meet elsewhere or whatever? So understanding that, I think, is kind of fundamental to understanding the relationship between the toll bridge and the town council. So thanks for that. We look forward to seeing more work on that. Staffing. Councillor Duke, any thoughts on that?
Yes, so there was an analysis undertaken at a very high level a number of months ago that is available, and I've got that in front of me. It will need to be refreshed to reflect any decisions we take about staffing through HR committee. But I think for me that meets, at least at the very top level, of the request. Because if not, then you potentially have to go into something like a time and motion study, which I don't think we should have. We should have in the current climate of staffing constraints, the ability to undertake. So I think this is a good estimate. Yeah. And it's STC, TBF, Guildhall, which I think you've probably seen in the past in any case. Yeah. So that is available, because I think you prompted it. Surprise. No point reinventing the wheel. However, it does need to be refreshed and updated. Yeah. Okay, but we have got kind of a snapshot in time, and we've got a basis to work. The allocation for the room usage, and you can start then kind of overlaying the two. And if we were considering options, we can actually then properly price options of different scenarios going forward. So that's available. So that needs to be shared within the group. Okay. Yeah. Included in the minutes. So just carrying on with the minutes, that's the work streams covered. Just carrying on with the other points that are in what we discussed last time. The chair stated we need to understand how the money flows, and that's part of the financial review. During the discussions, the Guildhall lease is to Sandwich Town Council, and the toll bridge is jointly and severally liable. And this is the epicentre of the web. And we'll carry on trying to get hold of this document. You were saying that there's a search ongoing for it. Mm-hmm.
What, the lease?
Yes.
We have the lease.
You've got the lease, but the title, was it the title document?
Yes. Yes, this is Fishergate you're talking about.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting mixed up.
Sorry, yeah.
The question is, what are we going to do regarding the Sandwich Agreement? Because the is defined probably in the next few months. might be an appetite on DDC to part to the conversation. I don't think the assets paper that we take at the end of this month can address the sandwich agreement because it is complicated.
Yeah.
So the question is what are we going to do with that? Because it's a piece of work in its own right.
Mm. Well, like I say, I think that that's for the council, and maybe the finance and assets group. And I know there's a meeting planned with DDC at the end of the month.
There is. But with that meeting, which I know you've been invited now as chair, which is right, because I asked you to be,
Right.
the best thing we can probably do by then, which is only 3 weeks away, is have a marker about it rather than going in. I suggest with a proposal. I don't think we can get to a proposal in the next few weeks.
No, I don't believe so.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Didn't the property manager do some analysis on the sandwich agreement?
Don't know. I mean, he's looked at it, but it's nothing that he hasn't done a lot of work on it yet. But he's looked at it because I think the one item that's in there that is the car park, which I think we agreed should be extracted because that does make sense.
I don't know that I've seen the sandwich agreement.
Have you not?
I've got it somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the only property still in there is Market Street, I think, the rest of all.
Well, it covers this building, it covers the car park, part of it, it covers 2 Market Street. And that's it.
11 to 13A Peter Street.
Which one?
That little piece of land.
The Mill Cally Garden.
Trouble is, there's probably no one at DDC who understands it.
Well, that might be to our advantage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there was a discussion about the governing document for the Toll Bridge Fund. Does this exist? That's still live. And that begs the follow-on question then about whether the Sandwich Toll Bridge Fund is empowered to own property.
I mean, you remember the Maddox document sets that out clearly, doesn't it? Sets out what its powers are.
Yes.
It can borrow money, it can own property, it can loan money, etc.
Yeah.
Employ people.
Yeah.
We need a similar document for the Toll Bridge.
If we haven't got one, maybe we need to create one. Okay. So then we've covered the next point, how the staff are organised from the previous minutes. So has any progress been made with DDC about the Guildhall? We've just covered that. Anything else that we need to talk about? Okay, well, I just kind of recap that I think, the objective of this group is to prepare a report. We've got work streams defined. If we can assemble as much data and get interim reports done as the interim finance officer has done, if we can get that done over the next couple of months for the beginning of September, then we can have a couple of months to finalise kind of the discussions and the papers. So we work and complete our terms of reference within the 6-month time frame that's expected of working groups. Subject, of course, to any curveballs that come into us, but let's endeavour to do what we've been asked and delegated to do.
When is the 6 months up? Is that?
Well, I think it's from the last meeting. Well, June, wasn't it?
December.
Yeah.
Okay,
To what extent does devolution stick in the deals of August?
well, that will all come out when we're absolutely clear about who has title of the various assets, and what the condition in terms of the leases are, and what DDC's intent is for the lease that they've given to the Sandwich Town Council for the Guildhall and so forth. What do they propose?
I just wanted to check because I thought I had seen this, but actually, in the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund, the Charity Commission, it does say the governing document is the Sandwich Bridge Act 1754, and it says, the details of the type of governing document the charity has and when it was established. It's not the full text of the charities to governing document, but they say it is the Sandwich Bridge Act 1754, so it does actually mention that on the Charity Commission.
Have you got the actual
Bridge Act.
text of the Bridge Act?
Yes,
Yeah,
we have.
We shared it to
Yes, I
SDPF
have.
about 6 months
Yes,
ago.
yes.
All the documents.
Yes, Sandwich Agreement I shared,
Yeah.
the Bridge Act, everything,
That's what I'm trying to find.
What is it, 17?
54. I can share it again if you want me to.
6 minutes to 6.
The Bridge Act of 1754, the Avon Gorge. So there's a few Bridge Acts, weren't there?
This was the Sandwich Bridge Act.
But in terms of modern day charities,
Yeah,
You're setting up now.
it's completely
Yeah.
Irrelevant.
or inappropriate.
Yeah,
So maybe longer term we do need to
establish a government.
table to the trustee an updated governing document.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, shall we close the meeting at that? The next meeting? When do we want to meet next? Do we want to have a meeting in August, or do we want to wait until early September?
Well, if the report to be finalised at the end of August,
Yeah, an interim report.
and you're content with what you've gathered to.
Well, I've got a fair bit of work to do between now and then, but I don't know if people are interested in having a meeting in August. I'm quite happy to have a meeting in August to kind of keep it going, but I know there are not many meetings in August as far as I'm concerned.
I think early September.
Yeah, so the first few days in September, I think,
Yeah.
1st, 2nd, 3rd of September.
We can then look at the interim report and so on.
Yeah. Is it Wednesday the 3rd of September or something?
Wednesday the 3rd.
Already securing a date.
And do we need to meet at 5 o'clock? Given the kind of members of this committee or this working group, I'm conscious that we're asking the town clerk to work beyond 5
Yeah.
p.m.
Well, the Maddox committee is on the 8th at 6:30.
yes.
So would it make sense to meet before that and then you have
Yeah,
one day
can
instead of two?
I'm not going to be here on the 8th,
Okay.
and I would go away on the 4th.
So we might-
Remember before
the 2nd or 3rd?
then.
Yeah.
So if it's on the set, I'm content if it was 4 o'clock, for example. but
Yeah.
I'm only
Yeah.
one of.
Okay, well, let's try and arrange the assets and the Maddox working group on Tuesday afternoon of the 2nd of September. I'll put a note out, town clerk, and see if we can get people's availability.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Meeting closed,
Thank you.
17:45. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
So long.
So we're back on at 6:30.